Hello and welcome to another episode of Software Should Be Free, and that is a introduction that I stole shamelessly from Jonathan Stark because I like the way he says it. So, as per the name of this podcast, I'm going to talk about one of the problems with software being free. So I open sourced Schema Explorer, which was very exciting, having decided that it wasn't going to had some assistance deciding that it wasn't getting the traction it needed to be viable in its current form to sell for 50 quid a year or whatever. So it sat there free, and I think it's been quite a good portfolio piece. It's been nice to talk about it. I've been able to talk much more freely with clients about it because it hasn't had a bit of a conflict of interest feel, because I'm not selling anything. It's just, here, look, there's a great thing that I made and I'm proud of it and you can use it too. So what's happened since then, which is interesting but in a way problematic because I don't really know what to do with it, is I've started getting contributions. So if you look at Schema Explorer's pull requests tab, you will see some wonderful contributions. There were some that were fairly straightforward, like somebody sorted out the import paths because I'd moved from Bitbucket to GitHub when I published it, and I hadn't updated the paths, and they're all encoded in the source files in Golang. But I also got some more significant contributions, and while that's fantastic, that takes time to read, make sure that it fits with the direction and quality and kind of thing I want for this product. Especially given that it's got my name on the front cover. It has to, if it's going to continue to be a portfolio piece, which is almost inevitable, unless I actually just kill it off entirely, I need to pay some proper attention to it. So I don't think donations is going to work in terms of funding time on this. I think if that was going to work, then selling it probably would have worked. I think fundamentally in its current form it doesn't have sufficient value for people, or it's not clear what the value is. I've been helping some people use it in person, and while people like it and they're enthusiastic, I'm kind of relying on them to tell me what they're going to use it for, because I don't really know. It's a funny old thing. So all that is really to say, just because something is out there and free, regardless of the effort that went into it, that doesn't solve all of the problems of that suddenly being a sustainable thing. I think the best example I've seen of a sustainable free project is by far the Debian Linux distribution, where Ian, the founder of it, didn't just put it up on GitHub, because GitHub obviously wasn't a thing way back then. He created a system of ownership with elections that has sustained to this day, and continues to produce a high quality, vast pile of software that many other Linux distributions still rely on in some form. That's a I don't think I'm going to get anything quite that extensive for Schema Explorer, but it's really worth considering that there's much more to running an open source project than just sticking it on GitHub. A really inspiring example that I've been hearing a lot about on podcasts lately is Laravel. If you're not familiar with Laravel, if you're familiar with Ruby on Rails, it's the Ruby on Rails for PHP, and it's been a runaway success, and that's been sustainable because the person that created it has had the wisdom to put Laravel out there for free into this very thirsty market, this very underserved market, had it take off like a rocket, but has also sold related services in a way that people appreciate, like decent hosting for Laravel and decent background jobs things for Laravel, and I don't really know what else, but the point being, ebooks, that kind of thing. He's done extremely well out of it, and that has allowed him to continue working on it and bring people in to help and have the time to run a community around it. Schema Explorer obviously isn't going to get to that point. So enough rambling on about the challenge, the paradox really of open source. I don't entirely know what I'm going to try and build next. I've got many ideas, and I think I'm getting better at filtering them through the lens of what would make a good business. And I shall pull up my Trello board of ideas that I continuously add to and very rarely do, and I'll skip down to the bottom and see what crazy out there things have come across my mind lately, and maybe talk a bit about why they may or may not work, because my idea is to collect as many as possible and then filter them through the sensible business parameters and also the product founder fit of, like, would I actually enjoy working this, would I enjoy serving these people, and the product market fit of, would people actually appreciate this. So the last one, Programmer Secrets Revealed. So this one is because I listened to the Sonny Lenarduzzi show, number 92, Best Online Business Plan for 2020. And it talks about how easy it is to create an info product and how that can be fairly profitable. And I realised I did a talk quite recently on what is a relational database for some of the non-technical or less technical people at my client, and that seemed to be really well received. And I think a lot of people find what us programmers get up to be mysterious dark magic. I understand that that's why when we have a conversation in a party and people say, "What do you do?" and I say, "Oh, I'm a computer programmer," they don't say anything after that because they don't actually know what to ask, because it's just such a mystery to them. So maybe I could do some kind of YouTube channel or something where I help people understand this mystery and maybe make a bit better use of it. Like maybe if all they've ever done is Excel and they don't really know what a database is, maybe they could learn to use Airtable, or maybe they could write some basic scripts, or maybe they could put some of it in a simple database. They don't necessarily have to get all the way to being a seasoned programmer like myself. They could maybe just improve themselves in some way and be more effective in their jobs. Maybe people would be interested in that. That's an idea. I haven't committed to this in any meaningful sense, but it's on my list. The one before that, miccheck.com. I even gave it a name. I don't think this is a good one when it comes down to it, but I've had multiple problems with either on conference calls or podcast recordings or scheduled phone calls with the whole you set all the computers up and then you're like, can you hear me? Hello? Well, it's working my end. And I still get this all the time, even though in theory I know what I'm doing. And so does the person I'm talking to. So I was thinking, and for user research, where we schedule a call with someone who is likely to use what we create, and again, quite often their kit doesn't work or it's a bit of a disaster. So the idea was some website that really guides people through making sure your kit works. I remember the Skype call testing service where it's basically like a phone call that repeats back to you what you did, and I think maybe I could throw up some quick WebRTC endpoint that relays back with a delay or something, so you could really quickly see whether your webcam or and sound mic and speakers are behaving properly. I'd need to figure out who I'm going to target, who'd want it most, and maybe it could be shared with the host of a podcast so that they can validate that the guest's audio is working before they spend their valuable time, or either of their valuable time, on just going around the houses waiting for each other. So who knows if that would really fly. Someone did point me at a podcast recording website which records all parties that does have a mic check. In theory, I had some issues with it personally, but it was better than nothing. I did try it out. This fails a bit on who you're serving. I'm still being a technician and coming up with things that do things rather than who am I going to serve? Let's see what else we've got. I've got maybe I could take the Schema Explorer code base and produce things that are actually user need based and charge for those in some form, whether it's a SaaS or something simpler, but hopefully in some way that works nicely with an open source core. An app for podcast voice feedback. I really think that should be integrated with the podcast players, but maybe there could be a central service that aggregates it all for all the podcasts. Maybe that could be a SaaS. I'm probably not sufficiently involved, but maybe that could work. This was one of my favourites of like making things up in areas you don't know. I had an idea for Therapy Now, where you just get a mental health therapist, just instantly video call. All you have to do is get on the website, get your credit card, and they're there. And you could have maybe therapists could show up when they've got cancellations or off time, and you could pay them for their being around, so that people can always get a quick response. And I quite like that, and I mentioned it to someone, and they were like, "Oh, what you mean, like betterhelp.com?" So apparently that's already a thing. So this happens to quite a few. Here's a really off-the-wall one: a fiction book called The Mall. I had a bit of a strange dream, and I thought maybe I could write a complete fiction book, but I don't think I should do that because that's a bit of a one-off and a complete departure from the things that I'm actually good at. Could be fun, maybe when I retire, who knows. Transcription service. There's a lot of transcription going on with podcasts particularly. I wonder if there's a bit, maybe with the advances in AI, cloud-based AI, so you can just rent AI capabilities on Azure, that kind of thing. I wonder if the existing transcription stuff has made sufficient use of that. And someone mentioned that they were talking about fraud prevention, but they said that they tried automating entirely, and every time they automated, the scammers would just work around them, and they found the perfect combination was artificial intelligence as a first filter, and then people that follow up on it, and that was a pretty good way of spotting financial fraud. I think that was someone who worked at PayPal on one of the podcast interviews I listened to. I won't go any further up because everyone's probably falling asleep now, but I've got this. That is 67 idea cards of all sorts, some hardware, some software, consultancy. The odd one is actually about people that I could serve. Dog owners was a thought that I had, but I suspect that that's not really the right market for a programmer. Much fun as it would be, and much as I love my doggies. So, if you're wondering where David went, he's not feeling too good, and we really struggle to schedule because I'm a night owl and he's a morning lark, and also he's been a bit unwell lately and flat out with client work like we all are on and off. But hopefully I can get him on for another episode really soon. I have no idea what to say I'll be doing in the next episode. I'll try and think of something interesting and useful. If there are things that you think I could help you with, I'd love to hear it. Drop me a line, tim@timwise.co.uk. If you want to keep up to date, I'm really terrible at emailing my list, but I plan to get better at that at some point. So timwise.co.uk/subscribe to get on the email list. You could even rate this show on iTunes. That would be good too. So a new thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this show with a bit of music, because I like it when the shows have music. And this is courtesy of musicformakers.com, who I really appreciate because they give out for nothing a piece of royalty-free music for things like podcasts. I think it's every week, and all you have to do is subscribe. I'm not being paid for this, I just really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the piece of music that I've chosen to go with. Software should be free from now on. So it's good night from me, and only me. See you next time.